I'm Gez, and this is kind of an interesting talk. It's a talk that I was really big on about 18 months ago, and I wrote a book. I wrote a book on Agile Marketing, how Agile Marketing, the incomplete guide. And the only reason I really wrote it was because I was doing a master's at the time in stuff to do with business and so forth. And I wrote my dissertation on marketing and on Agile in marketing, but doing a dissertation is really, really difficult because you've got to reference everything, it's all got to be evidenced, it's all got to be, and that actually got really boring. So I wrote a book instead because you don't have to reference anything in the book, you can make it all up, it's fine. So the book actually was a more fun form of the dissertation, and I put it out there going, great, we're going to change the world of marketing. And kind of nobody cared. So I moved on and did other stuff. So it's called The Incomplete Guide because I was always going to come back and update it. And I haven't yet updated it, but I think actually now I probably should. But this talk is basically setting out what the book is, and I'd love any feedback on it as well, any thoughts on it and so forth. So yeah, that's me. I'm currently working at HSBC, doing Agile stuff at HSBC. I've been doing Agile stuff for about 15 years in various different contexts. I'm really interested in Agile outside of IT, Agile in marketing, Agile in HR, Agile in infrastructure, Agile in all these sorts of different areas. What happens when you take something from the world of software and drop it into something different? What are the changes? What are the differences? And what can we learn about Agile from seeing what it does in different contexts and different environments, which is a lot of what this talk is about. But if you speak to a marketer, this is Agile Marketing for anyone working in marketing. In 2013, during the Super Bowl, the power went out. There was a massive power cut in America, and that's a really kind of big deal. And Oreo got this tweet out within about 20 minutes, and it was a tweet that reacted in real time to the event happening. And the marketing world went crazy about it. Like, this is amazing, this is fantastic, it's so real time, it's so now, it's so agile. And I was there going, that's not agile, that's just quick. It's not really a thing. And everyone got really, really excited about Agile Marketing. And I was like, this is really interesting. The word Agile is coming into the world of marketing, but no one really gets what it is. No one really understands why it's a thing. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought it's actually quite an important thing to be doing. This happened a bit later, I think it was last year or the year before, when Jeremy Clarkson punched someone. Snickers got this tweet out in response to it, and everyone went, wow, that's incredibly agile, that's fantastic. And to my mind, it really says something about the culture of marketing, that doing something quite quickly that's vaguely amusing is seen as this amazing, phenomenal thing to have done. It really speaks to the fact that marketing is actually quite a traditional kind of environment. And it's interesting because the more I looked into it, the more I saw similarities between the world of marketing and the world of project management. Marketing has happened for thousands of years. People have sold stuff and traded stuff and all that stuff for thousands of years. But actually, the modern practice of marketing is a post-war thing. The concept of having a marketing department of marketing people happened after the Second World War, as did big project management. Big project management started up after the Second World War with all the infrastructure projects to rebuild Europe, to rebuild Japan, all that sort of stuff, to do the space race. And I wonder how much the two growing up together around the same time in the same way, they've actually cross-pollinated an awful lot, that marketing has wittingly or unwittingly absorbed a lot of the ideas from traditional project management and become a very traditional project management practice, which makes Agile really, really difficult in that context. And you see it a lot in some of the job titles. Planning, being a planner in marketing is a whole career. It's not just something you do as part of your job. Being a planner is an entire career path, it's an entire department. You have planning departments. Everything in marketing is planned up front. And everyone's really proud of that fact. They've got this amazing plan and they're going to work through this amazing plan. Regardless of what happens, it's all designed up front. To the point that you have strategic planner, planning director on £130,000 a year, their job is to write big upfront plans. This is just so running through every single thing to do with the marketing industry, which is really, really interesting to my mind. And the big idea. Marketers love the big idea. They won't kind of just do stuff and see what happens. They have the big idea. Before anything starts, you have the big idea, and the big idea is this genius piece of creative, this fantastic thing, and then everything is based around the big idea. And the big idea generally doesn't change. No matter what the feedback is, no matter what the performance is, there is a big idea. And then the big idea is planned by lots of planners, and then it's all launched in one go. It's all very, very, very waterfall kind of stuff. They love awards as well. Marketers go crazy for awards. This D&AD pencil here, it's just a pencil. It's a big pencil, but the people just have conniptions about winning one of these pencils. Tens of thousands of people try and win a pencil. And it looks really odd from the outside. But the interesting thing with it is that quite often the way these awards work is not based on results, it's not based on data, it's not based on this campaign sold loads and loads of stuff. It's actually much more around someone thought that was a great campaign, the judges thought that was a great campaign, so they kind of give you a pencil for that, and everyone gets really excited about it. And to my mind, that's really odd because it's not based on empiricism, it's not based on data, it's not based on a lot of the stuff we expect within the Agile community. An opinion just runs through everything, really. There's a page you can follow on LinkedIn called Brilliant Ads, and quite often, I think every day or so, they post an ad and say, this is a brilliant ad, and everyone leaves comments going, yeah, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant ad. Again, never any mention of did this actually sell anything? Did anything happen as a result of this? It's all just personal opinion around that was a brilliant ad. So it's a really opinion-based culture rather than kind of an empirical-based culture. And a lot of the reason for it is this, basically. People don't know whether it was John Wanamaker who said it or Viscount Leverhulme who said it. But basically the idea was that half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And it's kind of an aphorism about marketing. But it was very, very true for a long time. You do loads of stuff, you put stuff out there, and you're not quite sure what's working and what isn't working. In fact, quite often the marketing delivery process looks like this. It's very waterfall, but you go through all the stages, you have the plan, you buy the media, you launch the campaign, and then something, and then profit. If you've ever seen the Underpant Gnomes episode of South Park, the Underpant Gnomes business model is steal underpants, question marks, profit. And they're like, it's a fantastic business model. And everyone goes, well, what's the bit in the middle? They're like, oh, don't know what the bit in the middle is, but it's brilliant, brilliant business model. And marketing is kind of like the Underpant Gnomes in many, many ways. Stuff happens in the middle here. Loads of creative goes out, loads of billboards go up, loads of TV ads happen, and you make profit off it. Stuff's happening, but you don't know what's happening within it. Which is a really kind of interesting cultural thing. So this opinion thing in marketing has been valid because that's all they've had to go on. They don't know what happens in this bit in the middle. For hundreds of years, they've not really been able to work this out. So all you're left with is opinion. Some people get lucky with their opinions and they become great. Some people's opinions don't work so much and they don't do as well. But it's a hugely opinion-based thing. And that's really contrary to a lot of what Agile is talking about in terms of empiricism and inspect and adapt and transparency and all that sort of stuff. But before I got into this, I was kind of like, well, should we bring Agile into marketing? Is there value in there? Is there any point in doing this kind of thing? And I kind of looked for some of the conditions that I think you kind of need to make Agile work, for Agile to be a relevant thing to be happening here. And the first one is kind of the complexity and the change in the marketplace. So I slightly geekily looked up when different types of marketing and advertising appeared in the UK. This is all UK-based data. So in 1624 was the first press ad, apparently, in the UK. 1867, billboards at the sides of roads became a thing. 1955, we got TV advertising. 1973, radio advertising. But there's not much change here. There's not much complexity. A thing came in, billboards came in, and you spend a lot of time working with them and you kind of work out how they work and nothing really changes there. But then in the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a huge explosion in the number of channels that marketers can use. So you've got digital display advertising, mass email marketing about 1994, Google pay-per-click 2002, LinkedIn 2003, Facebook and YouTube 2005, Twitch 2006, 2010 Instagram. You know, loads and loads of new channels are emerging all the time. And so you've got that complexity and that uncertainty and that kind of need to inspect and adapt into new territories that Agile's really, really good at. So I started thinking, well, actually, this Agile could potentially really work well for handling this kind of stuff. You've also got massive complexity now in the environments audiences are in when they're consuming the marketing. So previously, if you did TV advertising, you knew pretty much where people were. Depending on what time of day and what day it was you put the marketing out or put the advertising out, you knew people would be sitting at home around the TV. They only had one TV. It was in their living room. All the family sat around and watched it. You knew where those people were when they were consuming that information, so you could tailor your marketing based around that. Now, though, because of mobile devices, people can be anywhere. They could be in the park, they could be on the bus, they could be doing what's called second screening, where they're watching the TV and they're on Twitter at the same time and they're following the conversation around the program, and then the program is repeating the tweets back out again, and it's all kind of massively multi-channel. It could be happening at any time of day or night. The TV program lives online now and you can watch catch up. You don't have to watch it exactly at that time. So again, a huge amount of complexity. Previously you knew where people were when they were consuming your messages. Now they could be anywhere at any time in any context doing anything, which is again a huge amount of complexity that's come into the marketing and advertising industry. This is really interesting as well. So Previously, if people didn't like your brand, they could go into your shop and tell you, they could write you a letter, they could potentially phone you up, but nothing really happened. Now, if people don't like your brand, they can make that really public, and they've kind of got as much power as you have. So, this could potentially get retweeted loads, it get favorited loads, the message could spread. You no longer have control over your messages. In fact, it works the converse way as well. That previously you would create the marketing assets, you would buy the media would put it out on the TV, on the billboards, on whatever. You had control of the channels and the message. Now anyone can set up a Twitter account for free. Anyone can, in theory, reach millions of people for free. It's very, very rare that it happens to that degree, but they can, in theory, do that. So you're not in control of your message anymore. There's a huge amount of complexity. It's not a linear relationship. Actually, it's kind of a circle relationship with loads and loads of feedback loops in it, which again kind of speaks to Agile being useful for this sort of stuff. And data. People talk about, finally we have all the data in marketing. We understand what's happening where. We can really pinpoint who's doing what. There's people right now targeting people to really fine level degrees around the general election in ways we will never ever see, because only that person will ever see that message and so forth. But actually the data's created complexity. There is now just this torrent of data that actually is quite hard to understand, and has created even more complexity in how you understand what's going on. So we've gone from kind of not really knowing what happens, question marks and profit, to huge amounts of data, which in itself I think creates a degree of uncertainty as well. So there's a lot of sort of complexity and uncertainty and change going on here that Agile will be really, really good for. And does anyone remember Meerkat at all? 2014, I think it was. Someone came up to me at work where I was working at the time and said, right, we need to get on Meerkat. And I was like, what's Meerkat? I have no idea what Meerkat is. And they're like, it's the latest thing. We must get on it straight away. And it was basically an app for live streaming video through Twitter, which was great. And for about a week, everyone was talking about Meerkat. And then I went to an event that Twitter held in the Roundhouse in Camden a week later, and they announced Periscope, which is an app for live streaming video through Twitter. And suddenly Meerkat just sank without trace. Luckily, the guys who'd done, well, lucky for them, the guys who'd done Meerkat had sold out the week beforehand for lots and lots and lots of money. And then literally a few days later, their app was worthless. But they'd cashed out on it already. But it was that fast pace of change. If you think previously there was press advertising, then a few hundred years, then billboards, then another 100 years, then radio. Now it's right, 1 week we've got Meerkat, then the next week it's Periscope, then something else. MySpace 10 years ago was huge. MySpace is now basically nothing. There's a huge amount of change, and the pace of change has increased massively as well, which is really, really interesting. But it is kind of happening. Agile in marketing is to some degree happening. The Status Scrum survey in 2015 asked, if you're running Scrum outside of IT, whereabouts are you running it? And 26% of people said it's running in sales and marketing. So this is kind of happening already, but I'm not seeing much of it in a coherent way. There's not a sort of big movement around it. I put the book out and kind of thought this will be really interesting to see what happens. And kind of nothing happened, really. There's little pockets of it happening, people kind of get it and so forth. But I think there's still a long way to go, because this is obviously self-selecting. This is people who've decided to fill in the survey, and then of those people who are running Scrum outside of IT, where are they running it? And of those people, a quarter were. So it's potentially quite a small sample. So it's starting to happen. People are starting to get it, but I'm not sure they're fully understanding why. And the bit for me that's really interesting is it's the manifesto for Agile software development. Software isn't really mentioned in there too much. I think actually if you read the manifesto and its principles, it says the word software about 3 times. And you can sometimes replace the word software with stuff, and it works just as well. But it did fundamentally come from the world of software. So what happens when you take a whole set of principles and practices that have evolved in one space and move them into a different space? If we're saying that the way marketing is changing and becoming much more complex and fast-paced and uncertain means that Agile might be good for it, what would actually happen if we take Agile into that space? And in some places, it's a really linear relationship. In some places, marketing and software are basically the same thing. So I used to live in Bristol. Aardman Animations are based in Bristol. 1 year, they did a thing where you can walk around the city, and they put loads of statues of Shaun the Sheep around Bristol. And you had to walk around, you had an app on your phone, and you scan them, and you got all sorts of different rewards. It would tell you where the nearest Shaun was. If you managed to do all the city centre Shauns within 10 minutes, it gave you a prize. It had all little sort of reward mechanisms built into it. And fundamentally there, Agile and software development and marketing were almost completely merged because the marketing itself was a piece of software. The whole thing was based around an app. Sure, there was some Facebook advertising around it and there was some sort of press advertising and so forth, but really it was a really nice convergence between the two. And I don't know what happened entirely with it, but you wonder how much internally some of the people behind the creative had to get their heads around the software development world and vice versa. I do know actually the sort of project director for this was an old Scrum Master at a company that I worked at. So I know she was running Scrum to run some of this. I must catch up with her about how actually it worked in practice. But in some places, it's a really linear thing. You know, marketing is delivering software, therefore moving Agile into that is kind of quite a nice match. Other places where it kind of matches up well are things like programmatic display advertising. If you ever see adverts on newspapers that you read or on YouTube or anything like that, what actually happens when you load that page is there's an auction run as soon as you load the page, and it's an auction that runs within milliseconds, and it scrapes all of your data out of your browser, takes that profile back to an auction house. People who are bidding on your profile, then it runs an automated auction across it, and the person and the company that wins that auction gets to serve their ad back to you. If you ever use your browser and you leave a tab open with Facebook, it's scraping all your Facebook data out and pushing it through to every single advert that you go to. And that's why you see stuff that's kind of relevant to you, or sometimes see stuff that isn't relevant to you. All the time that I saw an ad for a funeral director was planning your funeral, and I was like, how is that relevant to me? I have no idea quite what it scraped out of my profile that makes me think I'm going to die fairly soon, but someone seemed to run an algorithm on that and think I'm going to die. And in there, it's interesting because previously what used to happen was these planners. You know, the planners, you create the creative, the genius, awesome, big idea, bit of creative that's impactful and beautiful and all this sort of marketing fluff. And then the planners would plan where they go. We're going to put in £1.3 million into TV, we're going to put it out on Sunday night at 7 p.m, etc., etc. The work of planners is now being replaced by automated algorithms. So the software is starting to replace some of these people. And again, a lot of this software will be developed by people who have an agile background, who have an understanding of this space, who will be inspecting and adapting and iterating. When you're running a massive auction in literally milliseconds to the point that you don't even notice the lag in that advert loading compared with the rest of the page loading, there's a whole lot of interesting, clever inspection adapt stuff going on behind that and so forth. So again, there's quite a nice matchup. There are other areas where it doesn't match so much though. So say you're still doing press advertising or billboard advertising. How do you unit test a poster? How do you take practice from XP into offline advertising? You can't basically do it. And another interesting thing you start to get in this space is who owns it. You get turf wars between it. So previously, you know, in a big organisation, IT would own the website and they build the website, and for many years marketers just went, well, that's a bit of a weird geeky thing over there we don't particularly care about. And then as marketers started to understand that the internet was a big part of their channel and a big way of reaching people, they started to say, well, we're marketing, so we own this, we should be in charge of this. And the IT people kind of fairly said, well, we've owned it for years, it's our thing, who are you and why are you suddenly turning up claiming to own our thing? And there's some interesting tensions I've seen firsthand where marketing have turned up and said, you must take our creative, and the people running the website have gone, your creative is rubbish and it doesn't work, and started to A/B test it. And the stuff the techies have written is far better than the stuff the marketing people are doing. And they're finally starting to expose some of these problems. So you start getting clashes between a very agile inspection, adapt, you know, just do small amounts and keep incrementally delivering value approach, with the marketers who turn up and say, well, obviously we're in charge, and obviously we've got brand guidelines, and the brand guidelines have been set, and we know what the tone of voice is, and you must do all these things. And then the techie people go, well, no, we're just going to test that. Never been tested before. So you start getting a lot of clashes and a lot of tension. And a really interesting one is around this sort of thing. This was a John Lewis Christmas ad. And if you've ever been around a marketer, the John Lewis Christmas ad is like their early Christmas. They get incredibly excited about the John Lewis Christmas ad. What are John Lewis doing this year? And it's always the best thing they've ever done. They just love the John Lewis Christmas ad. So this was a John Lewis Christmas ad. But a lot of what is talked about in the Agile Manifesto, the first principle, is delivering working software frequently. How do you deliver a Christmas campaign frequently? You don't. You deliver it in the run-up to Christmas. If you delivered a Christmas campaign iteratively and incrementally throughout the year, it would look really weird. You still have all your Christmas advertising running now. So there's a real tension. You've actually got really fixed hard deadlines you have to hit with some of this marketing stuff that you don't quite have to do as much when you're working to an MVP and then slowly inspecting and adapting your product on top of that. So yeah, that becomes a bit of a tension around it in terms of hitting hard dates and going in big with stuff rather than going in small with stuff and so forth. The bit where it really works is content marketing. People get really, really excited about content marketing. And this is basically the first bit of content marketing that happened. So if anyone's ever wondered why the Michelin Guide, the Michelin Restaurant Guide, is run by a company who make car tyres, it actually comes down to content marketing. Because Michelin, when they started making tyres, made really, really good tyres. They prided themselves on the fact their tyres were fantastic. And then they realised they shot themselves in the foot because their tyres were so good they weren't wearing out very quickly. So people weren't spending as much money with them and they were actually making less money. And they were like, oh, we've kind of really screwed ourselves over here. So they had to find a way of people wearing out their tyres. And being a French company, they created a restaurant guide and they put loads of restaurants in there that were quite remote and you had to drive quite a long way to get to, that encouraged people to do a lot more driving to get to good restaurants to wear out their tyres. And that's how they ended up spinning out a whole separate restaurant guide from a tyre company. It was the two together. And that's basically content marketing, providing people useful and interesting content that gets them hooked on the brand, that goes, well, Michelin, great, you know, I like what they do with restaurants, I'm going to buy their tyres. You're getting sort of front of mind with these people all the time. And content marketing works really, really well with Agile because quite often what you can do with that is just create a small bit of content, put it out, see what happens, see if anyone cares. We were having a conversation last night, some of us, about blog posts. You know, you write a great blog post and it dies, you put a really random blog post out and it does really well. That's, again, blogging is content marketing. You're producing interesting, valuable content that people will start to think about you because of. So inspecting and adapting around that works really, really well. And I've actually used Agile to deliver content marketing for a major bank on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And it was fantastic. We got great results out of it. It worked really, really well. But interestingly, content marketing is quite new in the field of marketing. And I wonder how much of content marketing has been around for a long time. I mean, you've had the Michelin Guide, you've had other little elements of it. But as a practice, people only started getting excited about it about 5 years ago. So I wonder how much, if it had been really infected with this waterfall stuff, it'd be much harder to bring Agile into it. And the really, really, really hard bit of Agile marketing is this. Marketers never admit failure. Their entire job is to talk about how great everything is, how fantastic and amazing and all that sort of stuff. If you ever watch a poker tournament on TV and it's been going on a long time and the prize is like $1 million check, the person who wins that poker tournament, it's fascinating. When they get handed the prize and they shake hands, they're not no expression at all. They're not happy, they're not smiling, nothing, because they spent 24 hours practicing not doing anything with their face. And they're so locked into not doing anything with their face, they can't even smile when they get handed $1 million. They're just like, whatever. And marketers are like that with positivity. Everything they do is great, it's fantastic, it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's impactful, all this sort of stuff. So if you say to a marketer, cool, we're going to try some stuff and it might fail, they're all, no, it's not going to fail. So it might, that's cool, yeah, we'll learn something from it. No, can't fail. I even had an example where I got in a debate with someone I was working with about radio advertising, and they were talking about radio advertising to drive people to Facebook. And I was like, that's never going to work. It's just completely not going to work. And they were like, no, it's going to work. And I said, look, let's run a test on it. Let's test it. I might be wrong. You might be wrong. Let's try it out. Let's do it. Put some money behind it. I'll write it up. I'll analyze it. And as it turned out, I was right. It did nothing. We ran all sorts of statistical analyses on it, and there was no correlation between radio advertising and Facebook traffic. So I wrote it up, and I was like, cool, we've learned some stuff. Let's send it to people. And I was not allowed to send that to anybody at all because it was failure. And we can never, ever, ever talk about failure at any point ever. Even though we'd learned something useful from it, no one else could ever know this. So getting marketers to admit failure is really, really difficult. And this is interesting as well. These are all logos on, well, I think they're pretty much logos of big advertising marketing agencies. And can you see what the common thread is between all of them?
Just letters?
Yeah. But the letters are for they're all people's names. I've actually got them. So BBH is Bartle, Bogle, Hegarty. BMB is BT, McGuinness, Bungay. And AMV BDDO is Abbott, Mead, Vickers, Batten, Barton, Durstein and Osborne. And RKCRYNR is Rainey, Kelly, Campbell, Wolf, Young and Rubicam. Saatchi & Saatchi is a really interesting one. So Saatchi & Saatchi, huge advertising agency, Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s used them an awful lot. And then the Saatchi brothers got kicked out of Saatchi & Saatchi. So Saatchi & Saatchi carried on running and they set up M&C Saatchi, Morris and Charles Saatchi. All of these things are people's names. And that's really interesting about the culture of marketing because it's all about personal opinion. It's all about being that person that has the great creative idea, the big genius thing, And occasionally some people get lucky. My theory is there's actually no genius in this. It's almost random statistics. Some people get really lucky with their creative. They do really well to the point that they get to have their name above the door. Some people don't do so well. They don't get to have their name above the door and they don't get to name the company after them. But it shouts to me that this is an opinion-based industry. The interesting thing you get is that the newer, smaller digital marketing agencies and the people genuinely working online don't do this at all. None of them are named after people. Facebook is not called Zuckerberg, it's just called Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, there's a huge amount of opinion based in here that's just written right into the DNA of what they do. Everyone wants to get their name above the door. They want to be that great person. So they can't fail, they can't experiment. They've got to be an opinion-based kind of organization, basically. And this is really difficult too. We talked earlier about data and how data's made things much more complex. Running an A/B test in marketing is incredibly difficult. I was working with a marketing department and I took an A/B test for someone to sign off, because sign off is this huge thing in marketing. It's all about the opinion, so you have to get sign off from the senior person, and that senior person gets sign off from that person above them. Takes a long time, goes up the chain, comes back down, then you're finally allowed to show it to somebody in the public. But we wrote some A/B tests. Let's just try some stuff out. And I took it to them to sign off, and they said, well, yeah, I'll sign off A. And I was like, no, it's just A/B test, can you sign them both off? And they're like, well, no, the answer's A. And I was like, no, it's an A/B test, so can we sign them both off? Well, there's no point, because A is the right one, B is the wrong one, so just put A out. And they just could not get their head around the fact that this was not their opinion anymore to decide whether it was A or B. The test was not with them. The test was with this huge amount of data we were going to gather around was it A or was it B. And they just couldn't handle that. It's really, really difficult to get marketers to think in these kind of empirical terms rather than opinion-based terms.
What happened in the end? Did they sign off?
I think we just did it. I had a bit of a habit of just putting stuff live. I once, I was working at Lloyds Banking Group, and it's the Black Horse. I once changed the colour of the horse. We photoshopped it onto a pumpkin, like at Halloween, it had been carved out of a pumpkin. And it was awesome, best bit of Facebook content we ever did. In fact, if you scroll back through the Lloyds Bank Facebook page to about October 2013, I think it's still there, you can see it. And it was a great thing we did. The agency took it back and sent it to all the senior directors going, look at this amazing thing we've done, huge breakthrough on Facebook. And they went ballistic, because you do not change the colour of the horse. I'm the only person ever to have changed the colour of the Lloyds horse. And we had a joke from then on, you can do what you want, just don't screw with the horse. Like, the horse has to be black, even though it really worked. The brand guideline said the horse is black, and the horse has been black forever, and the horse can never change colour. I wanted to put a little poppy on the horse for Armistice Day, or a rainbow on the horse for Gay Pride. No, couldn't do that at all. Like, in fact, I was suggesting that to some senior person's son when he was in on work experience, and they were like, these are cool ideas, we should do this stuff. And I was like, well, go and speak to your dad, he's the director. And then the next day, this senior bloke came up to me, he was like, what have you done to my son? You've wreaked havoc on him. I was like, I haven't done anything. He's like, he's got crazy ideas of changing the horse. I was like, yeah, we're going to put a small poppy on a horse for a day, no one dies. But no, the horse was black, and that was that. No testing, no experimentation, black horse. So yeah, really, really difficult to be dealing with stuff. This is probably another reason I don't still work in marketing in this context. And the other really interesting challenge is around this. So these are some of the big marketing agencies: Abbott, Mead, Vickers, BDDO, McCann Erickson, Adam and Eve, Rainey Kelly Campbell, Wolf Young and Rubicam, etc. They, nearly £500 million of billings there, £250 million of billings and so forth. They're huge. They're massive organisations, and so many big organisations outsource all of their marketing and advertising to them, which is kind of fine. But a lot of what Agile's talking about is bringing people together to collaborate, working face to face. Business and developers must work together daily, etc. And whilst you're outsourcing all your marketing to these huge monolithic agencies, how do you really get to be agile in that context? One of the big problems I had trying to convince people to do this was I could convince people internally, and then when I took it to the agency, they were just like, no, we don't work like that. And in fact, we were working with 4 different agencies simultaneously, all of whom were hundreds of millions of pounds of billings every single year. So they wouldn't do it too. If you're doing agile transformation in marketing, you've got to transform a huge amount of different people in so many different ways, all of whom are inherently resistant to doing this. It's really difficult to do, which is why I think it's probably one of those transformations where it's better done by just starting with small things that are not infected by this old culture and not trying to tackle some of these big things, because they might actually be untackleable, especially when you're changing an organisation and then you're changing a completely separate organisation on which you are completely and utterly dependent because they do all of your creative, all of your media buying, everything, basically. It's really odd. And the other big challenge is customers. I can't find a good picture for customers. So this is kind of the closest I can get to something slightly creepy. Exactly, yeah. Just I've Google image and Google image. There's nothing good that just says customer. So this is as close as I can get to customers. I'm not quite sure what they're buying. But yeah, quite often what we do in Agile is look to deliver, well, always what we should do in Agile really, but I think quite often it's probably fairer, is look to deliver customer value. We look to do something that's valuable to customers. And yet marketing fundamentally isn't valuable to customers. It's actually valuable to us. We're doing something that's trying to change their behavior so we can take money off them. They don't go, oh, I'm so glad you created that TV advertising campaign. That's brilliant. My life is better because of the TV advertising campaign you just created. We tolerate it. The really interesting thing that's happened around people putting ad blocking stuff on their software is marketers have finally seen how much they're hated. They never knew this before. It was on the TV and it was the advert break and you could wander off and make a cup of tea and ignore the ads, but you couldn't really skip over them. Now you can fast forward through them. Or, you put advertising in a newspaper, you kind of don't look at it, but no one ever knew you weren't looking at it. Now you can put ad blocking stuff on. And marketing, the whole marketing industry is just going crazy about ad blocking, and it's fascinating watching their reaction because it's almost like they're appalled that anyone is daring to do this. How dare they do this? This is our job. Finally, someone's going, the emperor wears no clothes. Like, we hate what you do, we don't want to see it, and we can now block it, and we're going to block it. And they're like, well, there's genuinely people talking about asking the government to legislate to ban ad blocking. And they're like, no, just make better ads, and then people won't block them. If you actually inspected and adapted and generated some customer value through your ads, people might sort of want to see them a bit more. But fundamentally, marketing and advertising does not deliver customer value. It delivers value for the people doing it. So how do you then translate that into Agile? How do you make it a more collaborative kind of thing? So yeah, these are questions towards the end here that I have yet to answer. I'm kind of leaving hanging there because I haven't really worked out yet. It might be there are no answers to it. To my mind, it's very clear that there are very big parts of marketing and advertising now that could benefit from Agile. It's all very complex, it's very uncertain. The pace of change has really massively increased. That's all stuff that Agile is great at dealing with. There are some interesting cultural tensions that, like you put Agile anywhere, you're going to get some cultural tensions. We might be able to shift some of those. We might not be able to shift others. But there are also some fundamental tensions around, we're not co-creating value here. We're actually taking value from one person to another and so forth. So those are my thoughts. The book, incidentally, is free. I kind of couldn't be bothered to market it and sell it. When you've written a book about marketing, I'm just done with marketing now. Just have it. I don't care. So you can download it from there if you want to. I also run a podcast on Agile transformations, which is kind of interesting if you're interested in Agile transformation. But yeah, otherwise, download it for free. I put it on Amazon as a Kindle thing, and the cheapest you can do that is 99p. I wish I could put it on there for free, but you can't. But be reassured that I only make 29p from that, so I'm making nothing from doing that, basically. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Any questions? Thoughts, comments, feedback?
The bit about marketing not adding value to the customer. I mean, I'm guessing some people came to this conference because of marketing, like a newsletter, email that they got, or they saw a banner poster or something like that. So,
yeah.
And maybe you spoke to that to some extent in terms of, if it's that it has the potential to be valuable.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it isn't. Because of, that's why people have ad blockers, because it's not valuable to.
Yeah.
Just any comments on that, because I mean obviously there is a lot of value in marketing, and to some extent we wouldn't actually have products and services to use if we think of marketing being like creating a market, where the word comes from, which is in order to obtain anything you need to see what you're buying and then buy it.
Yeah.
So if it was in old days, people would have a market stall.
Yeah.
But if they had it absolutely bland and generic and hid all their products underneath the market stall table, people wouldn't be able to buy it and know what they're buying and information about it.
Yeah, maybe it's an intermediary for the value that you'll get from it. The really interesting thing I think they should do more, and again, Agile will be great at this, is really targeting so much better. So actually every ad you see, even though the ad in and of itself isn't valuable, the product you're seeing potentially is valuable for you. There are occasions I look at ads and go, crikey, I'm literally looking for that right now, and that's really great. I didn't know that existed. I'm going to buy that and so forth. But that's really rare because they've still got this mass mentality. with display advertising, digital display advertising, all these instantaneous auctions that happen, the main thing they look at is reach. Like, how many impressions did these ads generate? Not really click-throughs, because no one ever clicks on a banner ad. There's all sorts of stats about you're more likely to get hit by lightning than click on a banner ad and stuff like that. But they really, really care about reach, to the point that there's loads of fraud going on in that industry at the moment, where you get banner ads that are stacked on top of banner ads that no one can see, and they still generate impressions. The actual definition, in the UK at least, of an impression is 50% of the ad appearing on screen for 1 second. So you could scroll past it halfway through and it would register as an impression. So they're still in this mass mentality, and if they got much more targeted and really understood what you wanted, and then there wouldn't be value in the ad, but there would be value in the product that the ad is an intermediary for. And again, Agile will be great at that, inspect and adapt, this kind of stuff. But yeah, they're still all about the mass broadcast and impressions and so forth. Other thoughts? Did that vaguely make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. Yeah, not at all. Cool.